We are now going to demonstrate the self-awareness activity, which occurs in Module 2. Your instructions will tell you to have people form 2 concentric circles so that they can have one circle in the middle moving in a clockwise direction and the circle on the outside moving counterclockwise or the other way around. You'll find that if you have a very large group in the room that might be a good setup. But if you have a smaller group, it'll be a lot easier for everyone if they can just mill around, just randomly move around the room, which is the way that we are going to be demonstrating the activity here. So I'm going to ask all of you to stand up, and we're going to do a nonverbal, no speaking self-awareness activity. This is going to be a little bit different from what you typically do, so let's come in the middle. If you could all just form a group in the middle of the room. And I'm going to be giving you some instructions, and I'm going to ask you to simply follow the instructions without speaking and just pay attention to whatever you might be experiencing as we go through the activity. Anything you might be thinking or feeling as we go through it. All right, so we're going to start out by just having you move around within this space. Just randomly move around, kind of milling around. No eye contact with one another. Just keep your head down, not looking at anyone. But you do want to be aware of people in the room, anything that you might be aware of. Anything you might be thinking or feeling as you do this. Okay, and as you continue to walk, begin to make eye contact with various people in the room. And you don't need to look at everyone. Pick some people that you want to make eye contact with. And again, pay attention to how you feel and what you might be thinking as you do that. Pay attention to how you might feel differently looking at one person versus another. Okay, now as you continue to walk, see if there might be someone with whom you might want to shake hands. And just have a little bit of a greeting with people as you walk around. And again, see how it might feel different to be shaking hands with one person or another, and what you might be thinking or feeling as you do this. Okay, finally, continue to walk around, but this time feel free to touch one another in a gesture of friendship. Anything that feels comfortable for you with the people that you meet. And again, it doesn't have to be everyone, just anyone you choose. And see how differently you might feel with each individual that you touch or choose not to touch. Okay. Well, at this point, just stop for a moment and just reflect for a moment on any of the thoughts or feelings that you had at any point in this activity before you go back to your seats. Okay, go ahead and get seated. As a facilitator, you will now have a chance to simply follow some of the questions that are on your activity guide sheet and ask people how they felt and what they thought and just what their experience was in the various parts of the activity. It was very clear in this group, for example, that people felt comfortable with one another. There were a lot of comfortable and easy gestures of friendship. There were a lot of smiles around the room. There may have been, however, some people who were not feeling as comfortable as they might have appeared. Some of them may have thought that this was a silly activity. Somebody may have wondered why we were doing this or who might be watching from down the hall. So people may have had a whole variety of reactions. What you want to elicit from people at this point is some idea as to any differences that they experienced with the various people that they came in contact with and what they were most comfortable with. Not making contact, looking at each other, greeting each other, touching each other, and so on. Because what you're really heightening here is just people's self-awareness about their own experience. So to wrap up the self-awareness module, we have also shown participants a video where they are observing somebody coaching a team member, and they're talking about some of their reactions to that. They've had a chance to share those reactions with one another at the table, and now we're going to open it up for an open discussion and share those across the large group. So let me hear a little bit about some of the reactions that you had to the person behind the desk who was doing the coaching. Who would like to start? Give me a few reactions.
I'll start. I thought he worked very hard to be complimentary, and he started out the discussion, you know, praising her work style and her capabilities.
Okay.
I thought it was kind of inappropriate when he was talking about the other team members. He was saying some things about the other team members that she probably didn't need to hear. Like, yeah, he had some issues with them that he probably should have kept to himself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that I really appreciated his message. I thought that he was very clear in communicating what his intent was. However, I thought the way he delivered it was a little dry and maybe could have been more supportive.
All right.
Actually, I'm not sure that he was clear with what his intentions were. I mean, at one point, he intended to communicate how pleased he was, but there was something else going on that he didn't let her know. I wish that she had been aware of the agenda of the meeting, because clearly part of his message took her by surprise.
Right, she was surprised.
He seemed
And
kind
it
of
sounds-
preoccupied.
Yeah.
Yes, he seemed preoccupied. And anything that you noticed that gave you that impression?
She would speak, and there were moments where he was writing while she was speaking, not paying attention.
Okay, great.
Eye contact was
Eye contact,
always there.
All right. All right.
And, you know, he did make assumptions about her professional goals without knowing what they were and asking her what they were first.
Okay, great. So one of the things that you might notice is that even though you watch the same behavior, a number of you had slightly different reactions to the same behavior. So, for example, he may have, even the way that he set the agenda for the meeting or the way he introduces somebody may have thought, oh, that's good. I like that. Somebody else may have thought, that's confusing. I don't like it. So one of the things I want you to notice is how different are the reactions that each of you might have to exactly the same behavior in this situation. The other is, even in the language that you use, as you begin to think about what you've seen, many of you are talking in terms of, in some way, describing or evaluating what he did, rather than talking about some of your own feelings or thoughts. So, for example, if you say, a couple of you did, well, I really like the fact that he did this. That felt really comfortable for me. I really appreciated something that he did. That's really tapping a little bit more into your own feelings and reactions. Very often what we're accustomed to doing is putting our observation out there as if we were somehow disconnected from that and not really having a clear picture as to what we are aware of in our own bodies and in our own minds. So let's see if we can move to that level. Would you be able to take a look at the same kinds of comments that you made a moment ago, but think about what was happening to you in that process? As you were watching him, what was happening to you? Were you uncomfortable? Did you feel irritated with him? Were you frustrated? Did you feel sorry for him? What was happening to you as you watched, as opposed to what was it that he was doing? See if you might be able to articulate some of that here.
Well, I felt like he, if I were in that situation, he made me feel uncomfortable. Because first I didn't know why he wanted her to stay. It was a little bit creepy, is the word.
You did say that earlier, so thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
So you felt really uncomfortable, almost creepy with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't trust him.
Like his
You
words
would
were
not
saying,
feel comfortable in that same room or that same table with him.
Mm-hmm. His words were saying that he cared, but the way he said it and his mannerisms weren't really matching.
Yeah, so in a way, maybe you didn't even trust him. You weren't sure that you could trust him. All right, so that might be very much of your own personal reaction. And I appreciate your sharing that with us. Anybody else? Can you articulate what was really happening to you as you watched that tape?
I felt confused. I was watching the tape and kind of wondering where this was going. At one point I thought he was going to ask her a personal question when he said, "Do you have time?" And that made me further confused. Like, is he about to ask her out or do something inappropriate? So I was just not sure. I was a little uneasy, mostly confused, just wondering what was going on.
Okay, confused and maybe even uneasy about
Yes.
where he was headed.
Yes.
So how should I be looking at this? How should I be responding to this?
I didn't know what notes
so
to
a lot
take
of
next.
reactions going on in you to this individual. All right. Any one other that, anybody else have one other that you might be able to share?
Well, I guess it's similar to Freddie's. His words were supportive, but he was cold. Like as he was speaking, it was just.
And Kevin, what can you say about what happened to you as a result?
I felt like me. I was like, "What's going to happen next?" You know.
A little cautious,
yeah,
maybe
it was
even.
cautious. Yes,
Yeah.
so that's good. Yeah,
All right. And I may not be putting the right word on your reaction or feeling.
I mean, I was uncomfortable. Yeah, it was
Okay.
definitely
Uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of wondering what was going to happen next and so on.
Right.
All right. So do you see where we're trying to go with this? What I'm really aiming at is giving you a chance to take a little bit more of a deeper look into what's happening to me in this situation. If I were here, how would I be responding to this individual? And as a result, how might I behave because of that? So if I'm uneasy, I might not be sharing a lot of information with him. If I'm uncomfortable, if I appreciate what he's doing, I may be quite warm toward him. And I may be very complimentary, in fact, in terms of how I might respond. If I'm feeling cautious or not trusting, again, I may behave very differently in that situation. I may even give him a bad evaluation as a result if I were going to be supervising him as a coach. So what we need to be looking at is what do we bring to a coaching situation, how do we respond, and how might that color our own behavior or impact our own behavior. So let me just hear from you, just as a final comment. What are some thoughts you have then, as we look at this, about how your own self-awareness can help you be a more effective coach with the people that you might be finding yourself working with and coaching on a daily basis?
Knowing how you come across is a huge thing.
Okay. So being aware of that, paying attention to that, maybe even seeking feedback so that you can develop more awareness. Other thoughts? How can being more
Absolutely.
self-aware help you be more effective with someone else?
Well, I absolutely agree with Freddie in that knowing how you behave and how it impacts someone else is huge in a working style and finding a way to work with that person.
Okay, great. So that's going to wrap up our discussion about the first element of a coaching relationship, which is your own awareness of what is happening to you, the biases that you might have, the way that you might interpret situations, which you saw, you might interpret them a little bit differently, and the reactions that you might have that then will impact the way that you behave toward the other individual. Okay, great. So then we're going to move on to the next element, which is empathy.